Now, the important thing is, this is very different from a Google rating. A Google rating just sits there. Google rating can be manipulated. You know that, don't you? Yeah. How do you get a good Google rating? You go to all your friends and everybody you know and say, rate me. Yeah. Because there's no controls, all right? So it's garbage as far as I'm concerned. I do not trust Google ratings. But I tell you what, if I want a contractor to do some work for me or somebody else's recommendation, I trust our ratings totally. First of all, because you can't be gamed. The only way you can actually get a rating is to book a job. And then you send back and say the job was good. So it's really, really hard to manipulate. But the other thing too is we have a system whereby we have an appeal system against any complaint or bad survey. And it goes like this. I'm the only person that can change them. It comes to me personally. It's a daily job that we have. You go to your franchisor can put in a delete request. And there are various reasons. First of all, your franchisor can show that you did everything right. For example, a client complains, say on a survey, or complains that you didn't ring back. What do you need to show?
All that's true.
Evidence of the phone call, evidence of the text within 2 hours. Now, if you do that, that's all I need, just written evidence. They said just attach a couple of files. Here's the phone call, here's the phone record, here's the text that was sent, here's the date stamp, 2 hours, bang, gone. Now, it may have been good if you actually rang again, or if you tried again, that would be good. But you've done the basics. Does that make sense? Yeah. And this happens every day. Clients are amazing. You would not believe how, you look at people and you say, how on earth? You'll send a franchisee, he rings, texts, emails, rings again, texts again, and the client says, I never got a call. How do people get service done? I don't know. But the point is the franchisee did the right thing, didn't they? So we wiped the complaint. It's only a potential complaint. It doesn't even count for 48 hours, by the way. So when you're talking about this 4% thing, it doesn't actually count because every franchisee has 48 hours to challenge the complaint. So that's one thing. Show that you've done the right thing. Also, satisfy the client. Now, you may not have sent the quote, or you may not have texted more likely. You may not have rung. You might have made a mistake. You might have overlooked something. But if in the end, you go to that client, you look after them. It may be the client wasn't happy with the job and you offer to go and do a whole lot of extra work for free. You give them a free service. You rebate, give them their money back. Anything you do that satisfies the client, not as good as not satisfying in the first place, but as long as you satisfy the client, you send a text to the client, you're better, you're happy now, client comes back, send it through, complaint wiped, survey wiped, okay? So you can actually get rid of complaints. If your franchisor investigates a complaint, one of the things we'd ask them to do, if it seems difficult, and this is a particular case if you've got a good rating, and this is where the 4.8 plus rating comes in. You've got a 4.8 rating, the customer complains that you were rude, okay? Franchisor rings the customer and talks to them. The customer's as rude as all hell, which is not uncommonly the case. What happened is you gave a high price and the customer didn't like it. The franchisor confirms that, says this is obviously what happens, put the delete request, we wipe it. It's not a complaint anymore, it's a price. So if your franchisor actually investigates with the client and then confirms your story, or the client says you haven't done this particular job, you send through the quote, which actually did not include that particular job, but the client's trying to get extra work for free. We'll wipe the complaint, we'll wipe the survey. Now in practice, in actual fact, most complaints, most bad surveys can be wiped, but you've got to get the job. So if you you failed to ring, you just got to do everything you can to get that job or do something. That may mean, as I said, anything, offer a freebie, anything, but satisfy the client. So it's a fair system, we believe, because it actually allows us to investigate. And I would probably knock off about 15 complaints a day, which for the number of complaints we get is a lot. It's probably most of them. If you're on the ball, if your franchisor's on the ball, you can usually get rid of a complaint, either by showing it's wrong, having your franchisor do an investigation, or by satisfying the client in the end. And by the way, that satisfying the client only came in a couple of years ago. We didn't do that in the beginning. That's something we looked at. I going through the whole system, as I do, in a very personal level and trying to work out how we can improve. But what that's a lesson for, of course, is next time don't get the complaint in the first place. What did you do that caused the problem? Don't forget to do these things. It's a lot easier not to get the complaint in the first place. Does that make sense? It's a very tough system, and I think you need to understand that. If you really feel you can't... There was one actual training course where a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, at the end of the course, he said, Jim, I really love what you do. I can see why you're successful, but I couldn't hack this. This is just too much. This customer service thing is just over the top. I just can't take it. And I said, well, I don't want a franchise. I said, good decision. It is. Because being part of us means we are the elite of the service industry. By far, we are the best. We give the best service. We have the best reputation and we charge the best prices, and they all go together. To be part of an elite system, you have to be elites yourselves. Is that where you fit? Because in actual fact, the biggest single thing that determines customer service is not actually our system. It's you, yourselves. That's what we're trying to look for in terms of potential franchisees. Do you have that kind of mindset that says, I'm going to succeed? You know, it all started before I had a franchise at all. Where I got this idea, when I had subcontractors, I used to build up and sell lawn mowing rounds. That was my prior to 1989, when I was, well, I didn't know, I was aiming towards the franchise, but I hadn't got there. And what I used to do, we didn't have any formal training in those days, but one of my trainers actually asked me, he said, what happened to so-and-so and so-and-so? There was two particular guys he'd taken out. And I said, well, they both failed within 6 months because I used to keep in touch with them. And he said, I thought so. And I said, why? He said, because they didn't have a good attitude towards customer service. Now, we weren't doing any selection in those days. I was selling a business. I wasn't selling a franchise, so we didn't screen them at all. So when I actually started franchising, I made that part of my system right from the beginning. I interviewed people and I actually put them out on the road, and I got my trainers to give me assessments. They used to mark them A, B, C, D, according to how good they thought they were. And if they got poor ratings, I would not accept them. So that's something I did as a result. And then over time, we put these extra things in places. And the results are there. It works for the individual, it works for the group. Great customer service. Now, I've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes about customer service. Are you starting to get the feeling that it matters to us? Is that sort of coming through? You don't need me to talk for an extra hour and a half? You sure? It is clear. I've made my point. All right. Now, having said that, would it surprise you if I said that when we as franchisors get together and talk and discuss, customer service is far from our number one priority? There is one thing and one thing only that gets far more attention from us. What is that? Profits? What? One thing more than customer service that we would talk about as franchisors. Franchisees. It's you, your success. Far more time talking about what makes franchisees successful. Now, there's no opposition. Some people say if you cared about franchisees, you wouldn't care about customer service. No, I care about customer service because it helps franchisees to succeed. That is the justification. That is the reason for it. Because we know if we give great customer service, you as individuals will do better, and we as a group will do far better. But in reality, you are actually our number one customers. Do you realise that? We had 220,000 unserviced leads last year. Do you think we're not growing faster? We actually grew pretty well. We did 7% during the year. But do you think we're not growing faster because of lack of leads? No. Lack of franchisees. Look at these empty seats here. We've got people at the back, actually. You really shouldn't be able to sit in here. So we don't block the entrances. We need more franchisees. We need you to be more successful. We need you to stay for longer. We need you to tell all your friends what a great deal it is. A lot of you, how many here are actually coming because they know somebody who's got a franchise? Wow, look around you people. This is the reason it's so successful. If we make you successful, and you're making fantastic money, you're getting great support, and it's the best thing you ever did. You know, when I talk to people I bring people on my anniversaries, like 10, 15 years, you know the most common thing they say to me? I wish I'd done this 10 years earlier. I hear it all the time. Our aim is to make you successful, and that is our number one goal. And customer service is part of that. It's not worth it for its own sake. It's because you are our number one clients. The number of franchises we select and we keep, even from a purely profit-driven basis, and we're far from that. The number of franchisees that we can attract, how successful we make you, how happy you are, will determine how successful we are, how fast we grow. It's the number one thing, more than anything else. So, what are we going to do for you? This is the important point. What are we going to do for you to help you to be successful? What is the first thing we're going to do? When you first approach us, what is the first thing we're going to do? You answered that question before when I asked you about customer service. It's the same answer. What are we going to do when you first approach us? Yeah, we're going to assess you. We're going to look at you and to see whether you're the kind of people that are going to be successful. Because if there's obvious signs that you're not, we are not going to want to have you in the system, because until we don't owe you anything until you sign. After you sign, we owe you everything. So we don't want to bring you in unless we really believe. And I always say to the franchisors, when we do franchise auditoring, when in doubt, say no. If you've got any doubts about a person, if there's something about them that sets off your hackles, or it just makes you think that they're not quite honest, or they're just a bit slapdash, or there's something about their history that's bad, say no to them. You've got to say no. In fact, when I talk to franchisors in franchisor training, I spend the best part of an hour talking about why we select, how we select. It's very important. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Do a selection process. You remember I told you about this case of this young bloke, the one whose mother was buying the franchise. I was really angry at the franchisor, but you know why? It wasn't because of customer service. It was because that would be a totally unconscionable thing to do to that boy and to his mother, to accept him into a business simply so the franchisor could make money when he had no reasonable prospects of success. That's what got me angry, not about customers, it was about him. And the idea that we could have accepted him was appalling. And since then, the franchise has, I won't say who it is actually, I don't want to even blacken anybody in retrospect, but it was an appallingly immoral thing to do, to take somebody on, to get them to invest money in the business where they had no reasonable prospect of success. So that's the first thing we do. Next, we do training. Now this training course that you're doing here didn't used to exist. In the early days of gyms, we just used to send people out on the road a bit, we'd counsel them, we discuss them, and what we were measuring was attrition rate. Remember I talked about attrition rate before? I talked about the independents, how on the average their attrition rates between 90 and 95% first year. And you can look this up, it's on Google. There's a system called the Cleaning Janitorial Service Association of America. Look it up, it's on their website. Now, as you would expect, and you'll understand more when I finish this particular section, our attrition rate was a lot better. We were losing in the first year about 1 in 6. We were losing about 1 in 6. We were losing 17% of our franchisees in the first year. That's attrition rate. It's a very easy way to measure how well you're doing in terms of inducting someone in your system. So we measure attrition rate. Now, 70% was consistent from year to year, consistent across different states, and in New Zealand as well. We ran this course. We put this together and we said, how can we prepare our franchisees better? The first year we did it, we watched very carefully that figure. You can bet we were on it like a attrition rate dropped to 10.5% first year. It's since then gone back up slightly, I don't know why. Got to about 12%. But it's never, ever, ever since then been as bad as it was pre-training course. This training course alone, and it's not so much the divisional section, though that is important, it's helpful. It's this business section that's going to make the difference. People very rarely fail at a mowing business because they can't prune a rose bush, because we can teach you that in 5 minutes. They fail because they don't get back to clients properly, they don't organise themselves correctly, don't have the right emotional background. They don't talk to their franchisors enough. They don't do pay-for-work guarantees. A whole lot of things why they've failed. It's never the technical side, in my experience. It's always the business side. So what we're going to teach you in this course, there's 3 days, pretty intense, aiming hard at all the things that are going to help you to succeed, make it less likely that you will leave, less likely that you will fail. It's targeted. Every session. The only session that doesn't do that is first aid. And first aid is obviously to do with your physical safety, which is, of course, even more important. In the whole history of Jim's Group, we had one franchisee die on the job, which was absolutely horrifying. But when you consider how many people are using dangerous machinery, it was a chainsaw accident, by the way. He held a chainsaw one-handed. It's shocking. Point of it is, every section of this course has the one aim only to say, how can we help you to succeed? So back in 2000, when we had those people who were not watching the course, you can immediately see the problem with customer service. I don't know about what else was happening, going wrong, but you could tell it from the figures that their customer service was terrible. So we knew they hadn't watched it. Training course, very, very important. Leads are also important. Obviously, one of the main reasons why you're more likely to succeed with us, and why you very probably will succeed, is that we're going to give you work. Now, that's important issue to understand. When you're talking about somebody going out as independent, it's very difficult to get your business off the ground. Once they're established, if they've got good customer service and everything else, they'll usually be okay. But getting off the ground is really difficult. I have a friend called David. We used to play games like diplomacy together from my church. And he's an electrician. Now, if anybody, when you came from the airport, you know there's a tunnel that you came through on the way? Okay, he was in charge of the lighting, electrical work on that tunnel. So this is a senior, very capable guy, great attitude towards customer service, wanted to get his own business going as an electrician and failed because he couldn't find enough work. Nothing wrong with him. In fact, if I meet anybody who started as an independent and succeeded in business, my immediate reaction is, fantastic. That is a really big credit to you to actually do that, because you have beaten the odds by a massive amount. It's great, because it's so hard, no matter how good you are, to start. Now, you're not going to have that issue. Most of you will get quite a lot of leads. Most of you will probably actually have all the work you can handle, even in the first month. There's a fair chunk of you that won't. You'll get leads, but not quite enough. Now, to cope with that, we have a system called Pay for Work Guarantee, which means that if you don't get enough leads to get a certain amount of income, now it's anything between $1,000 and $2,000 per week, if you fall below that, what you must do is go out and offer free services, and we will pay you to do those services. Now, if you do that, you will not fail for lack of work, because, first of all, we're going to put a floor underneath your income. But secondly, even more important, by doing these things, you'll be out there getting extra work. You'll pick up new regulars, you'll get referrals, you'll meet people on the street, you will get more work. I've never known a franchisee to fail for lack of work if they did this consistently. If you don't do it and you're short of work, you could fail. And people have failed in the past, but never if they do this. So the combination of the fact that we are pretty good at finding leads, most divisions. There are some divisions. Anybody here from IT or bookkeeping? Okay, yeah, all right. You're going to need to learn marketing, no question about it. But most divisions, generally speaking, you won't have to do a lot except do the work, do the upselling, do the other stuff we're going to be describing, give great customer service, use the system, use the paperwork if you need to. Most divisions, that's the situation. Mowing, dog wash, fencing, cleaning, very, very similar in those areas. So we're going to give you leads. We're going to give you pay for work guarantee to get you through them. By the way, it sounds like a lot, but in fact, anybody who does it never does it past the first 2 or 3 months, because they always pick up work. It's just a universal pattern. We're also going to give you the kinds of jobs that you want, where you want them. Now, this isn't just a random process. You're going to describe to us, define to us in the beginning, your franchisor will go through this. You're going to actually work out what suburbs you want to cover, what services you're happy to handle, what times of day you want to take leads, what days of the week you want to take leads. You're going to define this very exactly. So when you're busy, we're not going to flood work on you. We're going to get to the next person who maybe is quiet. But when you are short of work, we will be able to direct work clean to you. We may have 20 franchisees in an area. And we'll know if there's one person who's short of work, we know who that is. Now, this system in the beginning was hugely expensive. In fact, in the beginning, it cost me so much to do it. The administrative, it's in this book, by the way. Those of you who would read it, you'll talk about this in the beginning of how that worked. It actually cost more money to run than I was getting in fees. It was so expensive. And then we automated it, and that made it possible. But this system enables you to get the work that you want when you want it. That's also one of the reasons it drives customer service too. Because the problem with independents, why they often have a bad reputation, is because they can't control their work. Jobs come in when the clients want it, not when they need the work. So they might be, had nothing on one week, next week they're overloaded and customers get let down. But you don't have that problem because we're never going to give you a job that you don't actually say that you want. And it's your interest and a priority, because if you don't want the job, we're not going to try to press you to take it. The customer has to go find somebody else. Sorry, we can't help them. You're our priority, the work that you want. They even have a system that if you haven't taken any jobs for the last 3 days, you get a higher priority over non-territory jobs. So we're not only going to give you leads, but we're going to allow you to decide the leads that you want. And what that means with time too, you can be more and more fussy. You can initially start taking leads that are a long way away. As you get busier, you get more and more fussy until eventually you just take your territory. At least ideally, that's what you should do. So you always try to improve it, and then you focus on the jobs that you want. Like we've got one guy in the mowing division who does nothing but gutter clearing. Others just do landscaping, for example. You might even see Jim's landscaping. That's a mowing franchisee who just says, I only want to do landscaping. So we give you as much work as we reasonably can. You have paperwork guarantee, and we direct you the kind of jobs that you want to do. Because you can earn a lot more money on some jobs than others, and you enjoy some jobs more than others. What else do we do? We run meetings. Now, this probably doesn't excite you a great deal. If I say we run meetings, 8 meetings a year typically, you probably think, well, that's okay, that's nice, that's a bit of a social event, may go, may not. In actual fact, we've discovered from hard experience that this is actually one of the keys to a successful business. If you attend meetings, you are far, far more likely to be successful, to continue long term, to report a very good income, to be satisfied. And we discovered this the hard way in the beginning, because originally I ran my business. I was starting off, I lived in Blackburn, which is in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and my first franchises were mainly around that area. And I used to meet in my lounge room initially. We had a circle of chairs, and then we had 2 rings of chairs. And then we moved to a school hall because it started growing very fast. But one thing I discovered is that when we moved further away, like even to the western suburbs of Melbourne or interstate, we had a much higher failure rate. And we recognised in the end these meetings that were happening in my lounge room, which really weren't, I didn't think very much of, were actually really important. And that people who didn't have meetings to go to actually were failing a lot more often. Why do you think that was the case? What's good about meetings that makes people be more likely to succeed?
Best practice sharing.
Sorry?
Best practice sharing.
Best practice, yes. You get to talk with other franchisees who are more successful than yourself. Now, there's usually a talk of some kind, a presentation. It's often the informal stuff. Because you're there and you're struggling and you're making $50 an hour and you're talking to a person who's making $150 an hour. What are you doing? How are you doing that? And then you learn from that and you learn what's possible. And down the track of it, you'll be the same situation. You'll be the one making 150 and you'll be getting a new person and you'll be talking to them. It's actually the ability to keep on learning and learning from really successful people who are on your side. We are no franchisee, and I say this quite common, would ever think of another franchisee as a competitor. The competitors are out there. That's them. We're in the same team. But coming to meetings and learning new systems and new ways of doing things is really, really effective. Remember one particular case where a franchisor described to me where he was running a meeting on upsell. Does anyone know what upsell is? Yeah. Upsell is where you go into a job and you upsell to something else. And it's a very key part of being successful because you less travel and you make a much higher hourly rate. Top operators upsell. You listen to Dan tomorrow morning, he'll tell you about upselling. He's really good on that area. Now, this franchisor knew that certain of the franchisees in the region were not good at upselling. And it was costing them, it was hurting them. So we thought, I'm going to run a meeting on upselling. Now, because people don't want to hear the franchisor speaking all the time, he he had 3 franchisees in his region he knew were really good at upselling. Now, I forget their names, but let's call them Tom, Dick and Harry, okay? 3 guys. And honestly, he had no reason to decide that any of this were any better than the others. He just picked Tom. This is a purely, you can do it. Tom got up the evening of the meeting and he gave what the franchisor described, I wasn't there, franchisor described as a really powerful presentation on upselling. It was very practical. It was what exactly he said to the clients, how he got them. We'll give you some clues on how to do that later. What he said to the client, how he said it, the kind of jobs he did, the kind of hourly rate he charged, and just how much difference it made. Very good, brilliant, inspiring talk. As he was talking, the franchisor was looking around the room for these guys who were struggling to upsell. And you know what? Not there. They weren't there. But this is what really struck him. Dick and Harry, whatever their real names were, the guys who could have just as easily given the talk as Tom were sitting down there listening to every word that Tom was saying. Now, why is it that the franchisee who needed to hear this, who were struggling with their income, they weren't there? But Dick and Harry, the guys who could have given the talk, who were fantastic upsellers, why were they there? Because you can always improve, and that's exactly what was happening. The reason that Tom, Dick and Harry were such great operators is because they were always looking to get better. And there are different ways to run a business. You can run a business where you simply learn the ropes and you're like in a factory, like you're working on a factory bench and you just get to a certain stage and you learn the job and you're there forever. That's it. That's my income. From now until the end of time.
That's right.
That's all right.
Sorry.
But there are others who look at every job they do and they say, how can I do this better? How can I do this job quicker? How can I do it better? How can I travel less? How can administration better? And they always want to learn. And it's not a matter of being a genius or having an MBA or any of that sort of rubbish. It's just a matter of having that attitude that says, I want to do better. Now, if you look at my job history, and I would try not to kill the loot too much, but I am absolutely pathetic at doing most things. I really am. I am a complete monumental stuff-up in so many areas of business, and I knew nothing about business when I started. In fact, there are so many reasons I should have failed, like the fact that I got appalling personal skills. My wife reckons I've got borderline Asperger's. That's how she tries to live with me. I mean, honestly, there are so many reasons why I should have failed, but one thing I do have is an attitude, an obsessive, incessant attitude. How can I do this better? Every day of my life. And I include Christmas Day, Easter, Sundays, evening, anytime. I'll always learn. How can I improve? When I talk to you franchisees down the track, when I deal with complaints, when I talk to my staff, and I wander around all the time. I don't do very much in this place. I just wander and listen to people. I'm always asking myself the question, how can I improve? Now, this system is very good for the kind of person who has that kind of attitude. Now, I'm not saying that you want to become multi-millionaires. If you do, you're in the right place. You really seriously are. There is no place in the world better for starting off a business with nothing and making an absolute fortune. Most of you probably don't want that. What you do want, though, is a great lifestyle. You want a decent income and you want time with your family. Is that right? Yes. That's the single most common thing I get. When I ask what their comparison, when I ring my 10-year veterans, I'll ask them what they were doing. Some of them have made a lot more income. But more often, I make the similar income, allowing for inflation that I used to, but I've seen my kids growing up and there's nothing that could take that away. Particularly one guy I rang who was a 10-year veteran in Queensland. And he wasn't making fantastic money, but he works 4 days a week. He knocks off at 1 o'clock. He doesn't like the heat in Queensland. Makes a really good income. But what he'd done, and it was obvious from the way he described it, he had worked on his business for 10 years and worked out better and better ways to do it. Like he had a team of guys to go into a street and they did 4 houses in the same street and all the extras as well. He just had a really great system. See, we can help you with that. We can help you to show you. We can show you people who are very, very good. And they'll be at the meetings because the kind of people that do that tend to be at the meetings. And they'll talk to you about what they're doing and they'll help you and they'll encourage you and you'll learn that. And you'll recognize, hey, I'm making $60 an hour, but I could make 80 or 100. This is how to do it. And there's people there trying to help you do that. Your franchise will try to help you too. But other franchises will try and help you. So meetings are really, really helpful to have that process where you can just constantly get better. It may not mean more income. It might mean less hours. but you've got a better business. And there's another reason for going to meetings too. And I don't like to push the negative too much, but sometimes I do actually. I think it's important you understand. Being in business for yourself is really good. I mean, I personally love it. I reckon it's fun. I enjoy it. I like the fact that I'm 70 years old and nobody's going to sack me because I'm getting too old. People might like to, but I'm in charge of the company. You've got no choice. So if you're the boss, I can set my own hours, okay? You can ring me at the evenings, the weekends, I'm there. But I also pick up my son from school every day, except on Wednesday during training when I can't. I take him to school. We chat with each other. To me, that's beyond price. Okay? Being in business for myself means I've got that potential to decide my own hours. I can work in the evening if I want to. I get up in the middle of the night sometimes and do some emails. I'll do that. At the same time, the things that really matter, I've got control over my life. So being in business for yourself is fantastic. It's got many advantages. Let me tell you though, it can be stressful, especially in the beginning, because you don't have an assured income. You don't know what you're doing. You can have a week where you make no money at all because you blow up a piece of machinery, something like that. It can be very upsetting at times. Being with other franchisees, meeting with them, ideally becoming friends with them, getting their phone numbers, meeting up after hours, chatting with them on the phone is an incredibly important part of helping you to get support at times when you're down. Now, we at Jim's have a very strong focus on mental health. All the causes that we support are things like men's sheds and Beyond Blue and this kind of stuff, because mental health is a big issue for us. It's something that we focused on. All of our franchisors get mental health training. I'll talk more about some of the things later, but we do a lot of things in that area because it can be a challenge. But going to meetings, becoming part of the group, becoming part of an extended family is really helpful in that area. And it will get you through the tough spot because you'll have a problem and you'll talk about this and somebody will be there and they'll guarantee that you start bringing these things up, they'll say, yes, look, it happened with me. That was what happened to me in the early stages and what I did was this and it'll come right and I'm doing this now. And you'll feel uplifted and you'll feel reassured. That sense of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of being part of an extended family. And you'll find that they will want to help you. I can say this with great confidence. The other franchisors will get alongside you, they'll put their arm around their shoulder and they will support you and they will help you. And that is a really important reason to go to meetings. If you don't go to meetings, you are crazy. You are actually leaving aside one of the best benefits of being in the system. It might not strike you that way in the beginning, but it's really important. It helps you to run a great business, it helps you to improve, and it helps you to get that sense of support, which we all need. We all need that sense of community. They did a study over 8 decades of Harvard students of what made the difference between people who were in older age, they were happy and well, or sad but and sick. I'm very interested in all this kind of stuff too. And they worked out 7 factors, and they're things like not drinking to excess, not smoking, active mind, lots of different things. But you know the number one? Community, relationships. Coming to meetings with people who are in your situation, understand what you're going through, have been there themselves, and down the track where you can actually help them. That's a great feeling too. There's a story about in the early days of way back, there was I'm getting off the track, but I just want to, excuse me, I take this particular thing. There was a guy who was an alcoholic, and he'd been in hospital several times, and the doctors who were there said to him, look, you are destroying your health with alcohol. You're destroying it, and you're going to die. It's going to kill you. You cannot survive the way you're drinking. You've had near misses in the past, but look, you're gun for, I know that, but there's a young guy in the next ward, it's his first time who's been admitted for problems with alcohol. And it's not too late, it's too late for you, it's not too late for him. So I want you to go into that ward, I want you to talk to this man, I want you to tell him what's happened to you, and I want you to try and make sure, if nothing else, that you show him that he should stop drinking as he is, because it's going to destroy his life. It's just destroyed yours. So this guy goes into the ward and talks to this young man, and he eventually starts to plead with him and really talk to him about how important it was. And when he came out of the room, he said for the first time ever, he didn't feel the need of a drink. And he went on to become one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. So this sense of community that we have, I want you to take it seriously. Go to meetings, ask for help, look to other people. We'll do everything we can to try and make this happen. And then as you grow and mature in the business and you learn skills and you become emotionally stronger, I want you to help other people too. I want you to pay it forward, do the same thing. Does that make sense? Because it's more than a business. It's like a family. And when you join my tribe, when you sign that contract, not before that, when you sign the contract, you become part of us. And you matter to each other, and you matter to your franchisor, and you matter to me. And that's what being in gyms is all about. Meetings are important. Meetings are valuable. What else? Your franchisor is going to be your first line of contact. That's their job. We rate them very tough. If you think we're tough about customer service from franchisees, we are 10 times tougher about franchisors doing the right thing by you. Your franchisors are obliged to respond to your calls promptly and properly. The absolute most within 24 hours business days. Failure to do that is a gross breach of contract for franchisors. We also ask franchisors to ring you regularly, at least monthly, and ideally weekly, especially in the early stages. Just to ring you up to see how you're going, to keep that contact going, to see what's happened, to get any problems that happen. So yes, you ring them, but they ring you. That's part of the whole system of support. We didn't even used to do this in the early days. We didn't have these things. We call them proactive calls. We actually used to have a system where you actually sat down with your franchisor for half a day a year and did a business review. You know what? No effect at all. But we found that franchisors who were ringing franchises regularly had a much, much bigger impact. Again, it's the ongoing relationship, and it may be business related. Very often it isn't. It's something quite different, but you need to have somebody you can talk to. We've also got a psychologist online who you can talk to with it's all paid for by your fees. You've also got franchisee mentors that can help you. They're not paid for either. These people who volunteered to talk to you. There's all kinds of people there for you. A whole network of support. That's part of what we offer. So this is what we do for you. This is how we manage things. I talked about customer service before. I talked about how we make customer service happen. And some of that stuff is pretty tough, isn't it? It's a very high standard in terms of what we aim to offer to our customers. Let me tell you, the same applies to what we offer to you. We have a relentless focus on what we can do to make you more successful and more happy. That's the system I've just described of what we're going to do for you. We're working on different kinds of incentive systems right now to give you discounts and all kinds of things and rewards and a lot of stuff going on. But more to come. It'll change. And now I want to talk about the basic system that we run throughout gyms that's designed to give you the kind of support that you need and that you deserve. First of all, the contract. Now, you might not find a contract very exciting. I would suspect that most of you haven't even read your contract. Is that right? It'd be nice if you had. How many's read the disclosure document? I would suggest virtually none. You've read it. Great people. You must be lawyers.
Didn't understand a lot of it. But...
No, it's a mess. This is the franchising code, which is an appalling schmozzle, if you ask me. I reckon it should be far more. Anyway, that's another story. Point of it is, the contract itself is a very, very, very unusual contract by normal commercial standards. In fact, when I first considered the idea of franchising in 1988, it took me 9 months of arguing with lawyers to get a contract that I was remotely happy with. And they kept on saying to me, "You're being too nice." That was the words they used. You've got to give yourself more flexibility. In other words, more power. And I said, no, I want a contract that I'd want to sign if I was a potential franchisee. So, for example, territory rights. You get absolute right of first refusal to any job in your territory. Apart from that, you can work wherever you wish. There's no limit. The only thing you can't do You can't door knock somebody else's territory. And that was put in because the franchisees asked me to put it in. It wasn't my idea, it was there. They said, no, you own your customer goodwill. You get a client, that's your client forever. Even a once-off client 5 years ago, they ring back, you want that client, that's yours, no lead fee. Nobody else gets it, your goodwill. We cannot take a customer off you without your consent unless the customer asks us to. That's the only allowable reason. You've got an automatic right of renewal. There was a big fuss a couple of years back about franchisors getting franchisee and determined taking their business back off them. We don't do that. We can't do that in gyms. You've got an automatic right of renewal. So there's a whole lot of things that have caused problems in other systems that I saw that we knocked out. The lawyer said this is not sensible. Nobody does this. You're going to want to water that down with time. No, did the absolute opposite. Down the track of it, I started giving franchisees extra rights. For example, as franchisees, you have the right to change to a different region or even a different division if the franchisor will accept you. And if you're a good franchisee, let me tell you, they will. They will want you because usually there's too much work. No other system in the world allows that. So what that means is that if your franchisor is not giving the service that you want, I'm not talking about some manual, I'm talking about what you want, you as the customer, the franchisor. If you're not getting what you want, you can change to a different franchisor. That puts a lot of pressure on franchisors. You think franchisees are under pressure. Franchisors could have their business disappear. And it's happened at certain times when a franchisor is not giving great service. Franchisees start to leave. And what always happens is the franchisor then has to get out, because their business is collapsing around them. You can't do this anywhere else in the world, but in gyms you can. Even more radical, you as franchisees can vote out your franchisor. You can vote them out. Simple, majority vote, anonymous, confidential. Your franchisor will not know who you voted. Now we've got an actual vote out going. It's not from franchisees, it's franchisors to divisional. It's happening right now, this month, because the franchisors are not happy with the support they're getting from their divisional franchisor. But you've got the same right. It doesn't happen a lot because franchisors tend to be very concerned about the opinion of their franchisees by the nature of the system, but it puts a lot of pressure on franchisors, and it tends to attract the kind of franchisors who believe in what we do. Because if you don't do that, you can't treat your franchisees like they're employees, or like you've got to treat them like valuable clients that you are. So it changes the mentality. It puts the power. Sometimes franchisees complain about their franchisor doing this and this, usually the manner or something. And I said, listen, I can breach a franchisor. It's been proven they were rude, discourteous. That's allowed. But in general, the most powerful person to decide what happens to your franchisor is you. If you're not happy with your franchisor, talk to your fellow franchisees, get together and tell your franchisor to pull his head in and look after you properly and treat you with courtesy and listen to your concerns, because ultimately you are the people that are going to decide whether you be the franchisor. Now, in actual fact, about 1 in 5 of you probably comes under a region which I control as national. You can vote me out, all right? Though in practice, what's going to happen is your manager is going to disappear very fast if that was to ever happen. It's the same process everywhere throughout the system, and nobody's immune to it. We are here to serve you and to give you what we want. Now, on top of that, we have a system of surveys I mentioned before. Just as we survey your customers, once a year we're going to survey you, and we're going to ask you questions like, how often does your franchisor ring you? Very important. Weekly, monthly, less. How quickly do they get back to you? Take the call, get straight back. 24 hours later. How helpful are they? Very helpful, somewhat helpful, not helpful. Good question about meetings, and then the one about income I mentioned to you before. These are questions we ask every year. Now, we really work to get a 90% rating. If you don't answer quickly, we will hassle you, we will ring you, because we really want to understand. But these are anonymous. Your franchisor will not know which franchisee answered what question. They get very frustrated, but if we don't make it anonymous, we can't get the truth. And then we get franchisee ratings. Now you'll see your franchisor, there's different levels of rating. There's diamond rating, which didn't even exist until about 4 years ago. And this is where basically they answer every one of those questions pretty much positive. Yes, brings me weekly, very helpful, gets back straight away. That's the kind of arts. That's a diamond. A bit less than that is platinum. Then there's gold. And gold's also when you've got less than 4 people responding, so anything above that is gold. And you've also got something that's not very nice, it's a breach notice. So franchisors who do poorly, and there's not very many, because most franchisors and gyms are very, very good, will get a breach notice, and we're going to tell them sometime in the next 6 months, we are going to survey their franchisees again, and if they continue to do poorly, they must sell. It's not a termination, it's a forced sale. But they're removed from management. So that's the rating system. That again puts huge pressure on franchisors to give you the support. And it tends to attract the kind of people who believe in support. When we're looking for a franchisor, very often franchisors are actually franchisees originally. And what we look for is somebody who's got a good income, good customer service, and who genuinely cares about other people. And we try to attract that kind of person. And this book actually is a good screening tool. Because if people like the values in this book, they'll tend to be the kind of people that we want. So, you've got this whole system of support of operation. It's a number of different levels. It's not just one person. It's your franchisor. It's your fellow franchisees. People that have taken you up on the road who've acted as trainers have very often become unofficial mentors. You've got people who volunteer if you've got issues yourself. If you have issues beyond this, or if there's some issue with the basic system that you're not getting looked after, there's a direct contact that you have at national office. And that person is me. That's one of my key roles, is to actually be able to respond to you. So what I'm going to do is to give you my direct contact details, and I want you to write them into your phone, please. Very simple email address, jim@gyms.net. Not hard, that one. This is my direct phone number. Please write it in, put it in your phone's best. They'll leave it up on the board in some form in case you miss it, but get that down. Now, one very serious issue. I don't really mind who has my email address, but you must not give that to anybody outside of gyms. Well, actually, it's not a publicly known thing. I've actually had deleted from all the different people where you find contact details. Sometimes it has been known to happen that one of my franchisees thinks they can do a good friend to a mate who wants to market to gyms, and I can give you the direct phone number of the CEO of Gyms Group. Let me tell you, I would try normally to be a polite and considerate person, but if anybody rings me with that kind of response and I find out they're not one of you, I can be very, very rude. And I say they should not. But the question I would tend to ask them is, who gave you my phone number? Find that out and say, go away. It's not for anybody else, it's only for you. The only other exception is the media. Media can have it. When they want, I've done a couple of shows on television over the weekend, and that's fine, they can have it. But apart from that, you must not give it to anybody else. Is that fair enough? Yes. Your partners, obviously, yourselves. Having said that, I really want you to use that if you need to. Now, you may get the impression that I'm an incredibly busy guy, I've got no time. In fact, I am completely useless at doing just about everything in Gyms Group. I have no clues about finance. I'm not a good manager. I don't understand IT. I'm really bad at doing almost everything. But one of my key jobs is I like to keep contact with people. I walk around the office every day, talk to staff, and I like to hear from you. And I want to hear from you the good news and the bad. It's got more than one point to it. One reason is because I want to help you if you've got an issue. And sometimes you'll get some really serious issues that happen. Like I had one case not too long ago where somebody hadn't had their contract for like 5 weeks. There was something holding it up. It was just some bureaucratic by the rules thing. And I just went, fix it, do it, starting tomorrow. I can make things happen. I can override any rules at all. If I can see the reason for it, I will make things happen. I can do that kind of stuff. But what's also really, really important is that when you contact me about a problem or you don't like some aspect of the system, now I've told you for this thing about lead fees and complaints and stuff, it's not going to change, but there's a lot of things over the years that do change. Late last year, I had a contact. I'm going to send you a letter after 1 month, particularly asking about pay for work guarantee. I want you to respond to that. Now, late last year, I had a contact from a guy in New Zealand who said he only had 3 leads in the first month. This is a mowing guy, 3 leads. This is unheard of. And I checked on his system and he was entered in wrongly. He wasn't down for the right areas. So I got that fixed. But what was really more important still, nothing more important than that, was that there was a problem with the program. It didn't cope properly with New Zealand postcodes. So we fixed the problem. It wasn't just his issue, it was the fact that it applied to other franchises as well. And by the way, this guy, his name is Alex, last time I contacted him, doing brilliantly, plenty of work coming through. But so good that he actually contacted me and said, Jim, I've got a problem. And you will find, actually, I'd love to give you more examples, but there are thousands of examples right throughout Jim's group of the things that we do that would change because some franchisee had the guts to approach me. This whole system about changing regions, voting out franchisors, where do you think that came from? Franchisees. I can even tell you, when it was the vote-out system, it came from a particular guy in one town who actually contacted me about his franchisor acting in a very, he was basically dictatorial. He was following the manual, but he wasn't nice. And then we looked at it and said, how can we cope with a situation where a franchisor is going by the book and he's not being pleasant? And that's where the whole voting out thing came. In actual fact, that particular guy, we got him to sign an amendment to his contract, and then he got voted out on that clause. He was the first one. The franchisor, I mean. Because somebody had the guts to contact me. And often when franchisees approach me, they say something like, look, I know you're really busy and I didn't want to trouble you, so I said, look, I'm not that busy. There is nothing more important to me than knowing that you've got issues. And again and again and again, I can really help. And you can help me by helping me to understand things that can improve. You know, just to give you an example before, this business with the fact that you can go back to a customer and you can delete a complaint by looking after the customer. You know where that came from? It wasn't my idea. One of my franchisees thought about it. They contacted me. We're talking about complaints. We're talking about what they did. And he suggested that. It came from a franchisee. So in actual fact, most of the changes that have taken place in gyms that have made us a better company, and we are becoming a better company by every measure. You look at complaint levels, you look at franchisee satisfaction, you look at the key diametrics points, look at the ratings in surveys. These changes have overwhelmingly come because a franchisee had the guts to contact me. Please don't feel I'm too busy. I'm never too busy for you. When you join gyms, you become part of my extended family, you become part of my tribe. You put this on. You matter. You matter to me, you matter to other people. You're part of a community. I want you to feel that sense of fellowship. I want you to experience it. I want you to give it yourself. I want you to become one of the people that build our sense of community. You know the worst thing that ever happened in gyms? The worst thing that ever happened in the whole history of Gyms Group happened in Perth a few years back. One of our franchisees there, a mowing guy, when something happened to him, he killed his 3 little girls and his wife, and then his mother-in-law, killed them. I went across to Perth. Everybody was, sorry, it's hard to talk about it. Everybody was very upset, very, very upset. I spoke to a meeting there was a golf club there in the northern suburbs of Perth. I spoke to a meeting and I said to these people, I said, a lot of emotion going on. I said, is anything we can do to avoid this appalling thing, or make it less likely such an appalling thing would ever happen again? And they came up with suggestions, actually. One of them was that every franchisee should get a fridge magnet with emergency numbers, health numbers in particular. So we did that. That was an easy one. All franchisors do mental health training. This is what I described to you before. That happens. I've done it myself. Now we're not trained to be psychologists. We're trained to look at the symptoms and so forth and know how to deal with the issue. That's there. What else? We've got a psychologist on site now. You can just ring a psychologist, no charge. That came out of that meeting too. So somebody who's a counsellor. Also, another thing that they suggested at the time was that franchisors volunteer to act as mentors to help other people who might be going through a hard time. Just not known to them, not in the same region, not their franchisor, just act as mentors. And I said, that's a lot of work. Would anybody be willing to do such a thing? And you know what? Something that really moved me. Most of the franchisees in that whole room put up their hands because they wanted to help. They wanted to be part of something. Even though they weren't paid for it, even though it's a demanding job, they wanted to be paid for it. During COVID, we had a terrible situation in Victoria. You probably heard me talk about it, but it was very upsetting at the time. It was so useless. It was not necessary. What Daniel Andrews did was appalling in terms of cutting out independent. He didn't care, but there was no valid reason for it, and it caused a lot of suffering, a lot of financial hardship, because not everybody has government support. We had one girl who was actually in Dogwash, who was because she was on a student visa, she was no income at all. She was threatened with eviction from her home. But you know what was wonderful in that period? It was an appalling period. But it was wonderful the way that people rallied around and helped her. They used to give her like meal vouchers, and just people offering it. We actually said, she got evicted, you come and stay here at the conference centre, and we lend us the money and stuff. But the point of it is, I had one franchisee in Test and Tag who actually rang me up and he said, look, I've got no work, Jim, but I'm in a better situation than other people. Can I help? Is there anything I can do? And that was so moving, because it was a very, very hard time. It was psychologically a very hard time, very upset. I know 2 franchisees who lost their marriages over that particular episode. We had a young guy in the office who committed suicide because in the lockdown period, probably because of it. So it was a really hard time. But what really moved me was the way that people got together and acted together. To me, that is the greatest expression of who we are and what we do, that we care for each other. And when you go in there, I am very confident that you will find yourself cared for, to become part of our system. And down the track, that you will be the kind of people that will care for others. And you will support them and you will help them. One of the things I've often said, and I promise you this, I'm not going to let Jim's become a public company. I'm probably going to live for an extra 20, 25 years, which is probably more than most of you will be here. I wish you could all be here for 25 years, but probably. But I'm really going to set things up in a way that it will never become a public company, because the trouble with that is that when people become public companies, they start to care more about the next quarter's share price. They stop caring about the people involved. And that's something that should never happen to us. So that's what we are. Okay, all right. I've probably said enough. Any questions?